Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. In this essay, I'd like to talk about an example of how gender and race quotas and affirmative action and all these sorts of things contribute to a much poorer society for everybody. Everybody is now poorer. Sure, the peasant from the African desert somewhere or the jungle, they get a better standard of living than they had. But for everyone else, for anyone who's here already in the West, then we get a lower standard of living as a result of putting unqualified people into roles they just can't handle. So I want to just go through an example of that. And it's obviously accelerating at pace. There was a time not that long ago when you could count on people at a certain level of seniority would know what they were doing. They were competent at their job. Now, there wasn't in every case. There was still, somebody's, the chairman's, wastrel niece or nephew or something. You'd have those things, but there weren't many of them. They were relatively rare. There were people who you'd say, gee, I'm surprised they got that job, but at least they were sort of minimally competent. And what used to be the case was because people wanted to do a better job or deliver, better quality service or something like that. If they didn't know, they would tell you that look, I'll go and find out, or I'll go and get some help from my boss, or I'll go to the technical expert on this subject, and that they can bring them into the meeting, or so. They would actually do something to address their inability to move forward with whatever was being discussed. Now, those days are long gone. You get unqualified people being put into these roles. They feel entitled. They're entitled to these jobs because the only thing that held them back before was Nazis and fascists and white supremacists, misogyny, all that was the only thing that held them back. Was it their ineptitude, their laziness, their sloth, their stupidity, their low IQ? No, it wasn't those things. It was those damn fascist Nazis. Hitler held them back. And they've been infused with this through university and high school and so on. So the trouble is that people who don't really have much upstairs or between the ears, they're getting waved through senior high school and waved through university, gifted degrees, gifted high school diplomas, then gifted jobs that they're not even remotely qualified for. So this is a major problem now in the West. So here's a situation where one of my colleagues was going to go to the meeting, but then couldn't. And there've been a number of meetings previously, so I ended up saying, "Well, look, I'll do that rather than lose the momentum. I'll jump in." And it was already stalling and going pretty slow, and it was my colleague was complaining that it was hard work. So, and this is an organisation that I've dealt with in the past, and it used to be sort of exclusively straight white males, or pretty much, but now you'd be lucky to find a straight white male in the whole structure there. It's all the only white males there are gay, and the rest are women. Probably not a surplus of lesbians. There's a few, but there's a transgender, and everything's very politically correct and woke, and people are being hired purely on the basis of quotas now. In fact, they must have a policy not to hire straight white males, because I couldn't see one. Maybe there is one. Maybe the guy sweeping the floor is a straight white male, or paying them back for centuries of oppression. But this organisation has kind of been given, it's like a quango, I suppose you'd call it, but it's been given like a monopoly control over a certain aspect of business in this particular sector. So you kind of have to go through them, really. You can go around them, but it's a long and arduous process, which we may still do, incidentally. But it's easier if you can kind of get them on side and work with them. Now, there's a time when that was easy. The people there knew what they were doing. You could sit down with them. Okay, let's do this, let's do that. Okay, so and so, and it would be done. You go right. You'd exchange emails, and you'd be on with it. So one meeting, maybe not even an hour. One meeting would nail it, and on you go. That's all changed. Now the junior VP, I guess you'd call her, who's in charge of this now has no relevant experience, no expertise. I think would have struggled to get out of junior high school, or certainly struggled to get into senior high school. So all the qualifications, certifications, degrees, they're all bullshit arts degrees, sociology, communications, and things like that. So there's no way this woman in the days before would maybe have been a senior receptionist or something. But anyway, she's now a vice president, and has got a nice office, and all the bobs and baubles that go with it. And this previously would have been occupied by a very well qualified, 99% of the time, very well qualified straight white guy. Not anymore. So the meeting, what she needs to do is there's a number of parties involved, if you like, to the whole thing. What she needs to do is confirm with the other parties their involvement in certain aspects of it, put the information to them, give us the feedback, but we're really doing most of the heavy lifting, close to all of the heavy lifting. In fact, in this project, I'll call it, for want of a better word. But given the lack of expertise, given the lack of qualifications, and frankly just the lack of brain power, she can't get her head around what needs to be done. It's a little bit out of the sort of the 101, the basic minimum 101. But because it's not on her checklist of brush teeth, comb hair, put on clothes, because it's not done very simply in a childlike format in her checklist, she doesn't know what to do. As soon as the checklist doesn't cover it, she goes into a bit of a panic. So we're trying to talk this through, and I'm saying, look, that's not a problem. It's not in your checklist. Okay, I know that. That's all right. And I'm paraphrasing. Didn't talk this way, but that's all right. Now, you've got options here. You don't panic, because she starts to have this look of terror on the face. The eyes are darting left and right, and the heavy breathing, and she's in a panic because she's being asked to be accountable for something. She's been asked to be responsible for something, and this is a new experience for her. She's never had it in her life, and she's in her 30s. So it's got to be sort of handled quite slowly. So, okay, well, what about you go to your boss? Or what about you bring in some other people to it? And what about the folks down there? They seem to understand. Why don't you give it to them to do, and then you can watch how they do it, and you in turn will. No. She's not gonna let it go. She's hanging on to it. And so, no, I'm not gonna let it go. We'll go to your boss. No, I'm not gonna go to my boss. All right, then we'll bring in some experts in here. No, I won't do that. And all the while she's sort of the heavy breathing, and the eyes are there. She looks like she's going to cry. The eyes are bulging and going red. It's and it's hard to believe that and she's got all these exits that she can go through to sort of relieve the stress, but she won't, and she's hanging on to it. But this is what overpromoted, childlike, overindulged amateurs do. This is what they do. This is how they behave. Now, if she was sort of 19 years old, you go, okay, well, that's fair enough. But then 19-year-olds typically don't get put into vice president jobs. So, and if you sort of talking to her about how her work experience, she's really never had a real job. Never had responsibility, never had to be responsible for an outcome. This is the start, this is the finish, I did that, or I was primarily instrumental in getting that done. She's never had that. So you're talking about someone who's emotionally and in terms of work development, really still a high school girl. But she hasn't really sort of got out of that, and even then a young high school girl. She's terrified of being judged, terrified of being sort of tested and having an exam or something where there's pass and fail. Absolutely terrified of it. So I wonder what to do now. Now, normally I wouldn't care. It makes a difference to me, but she's the one we have to go through to get something done. We have to deal with her. So it's not an option where we can just go, okay, and walk away. We don't have that option. That organisation has been given that prominent role by the government, and which means their salaries and the rent for the office, everything's getting paid. They don't have to worry about performing or delivering an outcome, delivering results, and it shows in their attitude, by the way. But she doesn't have any understanding of getting it done, but won't let it go, and has this childlike attitude. Now, all the encouragement, well, why don't, come on, why don't we get in the expert? I'm talking to her as almost like a, I don't know, a brother or something. Come on, why don't we get, why don't we get Billy Bob in? He's the expert on this. Look, I saw him there at, when I walked through the reception earlier. Why don't we get him in and see what Billy Bob has to say? He's a colleague of yours. He seems to be no, I don't want to, no. And it's fucking pathetic. So, but that's what you have to deal with. Now, again, that wasn't always that way. And this is increasingly, this is the standard. Now, you sort of run a risk here with these people in order to you're oppressing me, you expect me to do a job and do it well, and that's oppression, you're a Nazi. I mean, it's that sort of, like, if you look at the wider vibe around the thing, that's about the size of it. Holy fuck. But there would have been a time when people would have, as I mentioned earlier, would have responded, okay, well, I don't know the answer to that, Billy Bob, but I'll go and speak with Jimmy Jack and we'll get this solved. Look, I'll call him now on the internal phone, or I'll do this or do that, or send him a text. And let's get this nailed now, because you guys are coming for enough meetings already, and we're feeling a little bit guilty about all the your time that we're wasting. This woman had nothing, did not give a shit about wasting people's time, about how long it took. We were there, and her role was to make her feel good about herself. And the more she fucked up and the more mistakes she made, then the more we had to indulge her so she wouldn't feel bad about herself. Now, there's a problem with her boss and her boss's boss and people who are putting it, but their attitude isn't that we're here to do a job. Their attitude is we're here to change the world by appointing incompetent people into every job we can. And that will create the equity. IQ of 50, give them the job. It's such an absurd attitude, because it's the time that we've spent going meeting after meeting after meeting, going round in circles. And that's sort of, the time and the money and the expense and the aggravation. That's something that in a real business environment would be viewed and deemed as completely unacceptable. Hey, put someone in that job who knows what they're doing. It wouldn't even have been something that would have required a statement or a discussion or a debate back in the day. But now, you say, well, Jane doesn't know what she's doing. She's not. Well, what do you mean by that? Are you Hitler? Are you a Nazi? No. She just doesn't know what she is. She's not qualified. Oh, so you can't even have that conversation, because it's viewed in itself as an act of oppression to point out someone's gross ineptitude. So all you can do is other than going around it and trying to pursue a completely different course of action, all you can do is indulge them and patiently wait while they plod along and plod along and plod along. Maybe they'll get there, maybe they won't, but and maybe that's why people are employing sort of low cost labor. Maybe I should employ someone on $2 a year or something and let them sit through the endless processes, and then they can meet incompetent person to incompetent person. They can have their meetings, spend all year doing it, and it. But that's not, I'm being silly there. That's not feasible, because we've got a job to do. We've got clients to keep happy who won't indulge us in the way that those people expect to be. So this is something that when you multiply this out across the workspace and across the nation and across the Western world, you can see the monumental fucking cost these race, gender, quotas and affirmative action have. Now it's nice to think that someone who's the mentally retarded person in the wheelchair or something has been given the VP's job. Oh, the equity, it's so beautiful, it's so nice. It is in some sort of childlike fantasy world. It is nice, but not in the real world, where there are mortgages to pay and kids to put through school and car payments to make and that sort of thing. So there's just a thing on that. But I'm picturing her face sort of now, that contorted in in sort in sort of terror and agony, the eyes darting all over the place, and the heavy breathing, and the face going red, and the eyes bulging. And all she's got to do is say, "Well, I'll bring in the expert on that, or I'll talk to my boss about it, or what do you think we should do?" Or something. That's all she's got to do, which is what any basic professional would do, especially someone who's got to that level. But instead, it's getting the infantile schoolgirl attitude, and an indulged, spiteful, petty attitude. And don't sell these people short. They may have no energy to go and get the job done as it should be done, but they will have boundless energy when it comes to being petty and spiteful and those sorts of things. That's when they really have a lot of energy. Otherwise, they seem to be like molasses in the energy they apply to things they should be doing and are paid to do. You've been with Tassos today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.